That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Beetlejuice, the 20th film directed by Tim Burton, which Warner Brothers is releasing September 6th, 2024, about a week or so after it premiered as the opening night film of the 81st Venice Film Festival.
That's right, which you saw last week.
Yes.
So we all know Tim Burton,
Mm-hmm.
and we should all know the 1988 film Beetlejuice.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a sequel 30 some years in the making.
Uh-huh.
What is this movie about? After a family tragedy, 3 generations of the Deetz family return home to Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life is turned upside down when her teenage daughter Astrid accidentally opens the portal to the afterlife. What is your pull quote?
A zany, ultimately superfluous sequel, which coasts on the charm of several beloved cast members, Burton's return to his first major breakout succeeds only in stops and starts. The juice might be loose, but it's definitely not 100% concentrated.
Oh, that's a good one. Mine. A team of veteran actors make this chaotic effort a pleasant affair. This movie feels like, it just feels like one of those everything cookies. They just
Mhm.
shoved everything they could in here.
It's scattershot, yeah.
Yes. Um, how many writers were there?
There were 3, Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, who I believe worked on the Wednesday Netflix series with Tim Burton, and then Seth Grahame-Smith, who I know wrote Dark Shadows, or was a
Yeah.
co-writer.
It feels like several people had a hand in this story and they shot everything and mashed it all together. But the film has a short running time. So,
It feels longer than it is, though.
but then yeah, it feels longer because there's so much happening. Okay, I'm going to try to explain it. So, spoilers, if you don't want to hear them, turn it off. Okay, it's 30 years later, and Winona Ryder, Lydia,
Lydia Deetz.
she is now a famous television personality. She has a TV show called Ghost House, where she goes to people's homes who think they're haunted and communes with the afterlife. So she has a daughter, Jenna Ortega.
Mhm.
She's in high school, I believe.
Yeah.
And they're kind of estranged. Jenna Ortega doesn't like her mom because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, Jenna doesn't believe in ghosts, so she thinks her mom is a fraud. And then her mom's manager and boyfriend, Justin Theroux, is a D-bag. But also because Jenna's dad is dead.
Hmm.
And we can talk more about it, but Jenna's upset that her mother can see other ghosts, but not her dad, which doesn't make sense to me. So they have that relationship. Catherine O'Hara's in the movie because she's Lydia's stepmom, but also because Lydia's dad, who was played by Jeffrey Jones in the 1988 film, he has died very recently due to a shark attack. And we need to talk about his character. But I guess what propels the plot forward is everyone returns to Winter River for Jeffrey Jones' funeral. Charles.
Hmm.
Okay. While they're there, Jenna Ortega meets this young boy. I guess,
Jeremy.
what is his name?
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Played by Arthur Conti. They bond over Dostoevsky.
Yes, I actually liked his character or the actor, but he's almost too good to be true. They bond instantly, and it's also Halloween time, so he invites her over. And the first gag of the movie that actually I thought was very effective is we find out that boy is a ghost. So Jenna Ortega has powers like her mom. She can see spirits. And this boy is like surprised because no one ever sees him. So he basically says, we can be together. You can bring me back to life if you recite this incantation. But he tricks her. He's not, because he's played out to be like a sweet kid who accidentally died falling from a treehouse. But in actuality, he murdered his parents and died falling from like his bedroom window trying to escape. So he tricks her into basically exchanging her soul to give it to him so he can come back, and she goes into the afterlife. Her mother, Winona, realizes this and is like, well, what am I going to do? I know, I'll call Beetlejuice. She does. And Beetlejuice says, I'm happy to help you, but you have to marry me. Because for people who don't remember, Beetlejuice is in love with Lydia. And he has been kind of haunting her from afar all these years, because the opening of the film is we see Winona sort of, she catches glimpses of him like he's like mildly stalking her.
Mhm.
Beetlejuice helps her. He kills the boy, Jeremy. But guess who is in the afterlife as well? Jenna's dad. So he technically is the one who helps them escape. And you guess who else is in the afterlife? Catherine O'Hara. She dies, which we can get to. But Winona escapes the afterlife thinking, like totally ignoring the fact that she signed a contract to marry Beetlejuice. And so she leaves the afterlife and runs to the church to marry Justin Theroux, who has asked her to marry him at her father's funeral, and she agrees. But guess who shows up at the wedding? Beetlejuice. So that's the scene in the trailer where all the influencers' faces get sucked into the telephone. But we have two more characters who have prominent roles in this movie. Willem Dafoe plays a detective in the afterlife, and he's chasing Beetlejuice because Beetlejuice broke the rules by bringing what he calls a flesh bag and a not dead person into the afterlife. And then we have Monica Bellucci, who's playing Beetlejuice's ex,
Dolores.
who looks fabulous.
She looks great. She's also, I believe, dating Tim Burton.
Oh, wow. Well, her character had nothing to do, but we can get to that too. Anyway, they're there. Monica and Justin are killed by a sandworm. And then Jenna Ortega, because now Beetlejuice is like, well, you have to fulfill your contract, Winona. And Jenna says, oh, actually, the contract is null and void. You broke the rules by bringing someone who's not dead into the afterlife. And then they say, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. He vanishes, the end. There is a final scene that's like a dream within a dream that serves no purpose.
It's a
Except that
callback.
we get,
Sorry, it's a callback to an earlier scene in the movie.
well, that's what I was going to say. The only purpose it serves is that we get to see baby Beetlejuice again, which I think is a highlight. But
Yeah, it's kind of like Larry Cohen's "It's Alive, Baby," but
um, I can just start going through my notes. I thought the opening was kind of strong because we see the Ghost TV show, although I feel like Winona's a little sleepy because the people she's interviewing, the husband and wife whose house are haunted, I felt like they were bringing more camp and fun to that scene than she was.
I think I like, that Danny Elfman score, which is fantastic, kind of gets you hyped through the opening credits, and then you see Winona as Lydia, kind of in the window like Norma Bates, almost, and then we find out that that's a replica of the ghost house from the earlier film where she does this TV show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of had a big problem with her character. She just seems vacant.
Which I also feel that way, but I was trying to justify it by thinking like, because I've seen the 1988 film 100 times, and I guess I was thinking like, what would Lydia Deetz from the 1988 film be like 30 years later?
Right. And I think the screenwriters don't really take into account that she's a whole adult woman now, and they just make her completely the same.
Yeah, so I think that's the problem for me is she doesn't seem like she's grown. She's also medicated because it would seem
I
that her psychiatrist thinks she's having delusions and that she can't really see ghosts. So she takes I'm assuming some kind of antipsychotic, but then her man, Justin Theroux, throws her pills away, telling her, I told you you shouldn't take those. So then it's like, so is she not on them? And so then that wouldn't explain why she's so sedate. But Speaking of Justin Theroux, he's on my worst hair list. I know he's supposed to seem like a douchebag, but I hated his wig. The way you're like, I mean, that hairstyle works if it's like Stanley Tucci in the Hunger Games. Like that works, but on him it just looks like he's wearing like a Dracula costume to me. I just hate it. I just really didn't like his character.
They just don't play him up well enough. I don't
No,
know. It feels so inconsequential.
you're right because in the end, when he every, everyone can see right through him. The audience, Jenna, the only person, Catherine O'Hara, the only person who doesn't see he's using her, Winona is Winona. But in the end, when Beetlejuice gives Justin Theroux truth serum and he explains like, because Justin Theroux met Winona at like a grief retreat after her man died. He tells the truth and says, "Oh, I go to the grief retreats to meet women who are vulnerable, and I'm only with you because of the money, and I only want to marry you because I think I could make even more money as your husband and not just your manager." But I thought that was such a they don't play him up enough, and then for that scene with the truth serum, it's like, well, duh, like that's everyone knows that's what you're doing.
But
Uh,
I feel like they needed to modify his intentions in a way that, because in the original film, Beetlejuice is trying to marry Lydia so that he can come back to Earth and
right.
recap. That's what I thought it was. And I don't know, there needed to be something more about the stakes needed to be higher for him to actually marry Lydia at the end. So then you have these two coinciding kind of energy suckers, one for Beetlejuice and one for Lydia, that get taken down at the same time that have similar aims.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about Charles, the Jeffrey Jones character from the 1988 film. He is such a big part of this movie, and
Yes.
I'm assuming he's not in it because of his criminal offenses. Maybe he was asked and he said no. I don't know, but it feels weird if he wasn't offered a role because of his criminal offenses because he's in it a lot.
He is a prominent dramatic catalyst, as is the another absent father figure who we do meet toward the end. But yeah, that it's really awkward, and I would bet money that it's because of the sex offender scandal that he was a part of 20 years ago.
But don't you think I mean, I feel like that's like it's very hypocritical that they need that character. So we see so the story of how he dies is told by Catherine O'Hara. But of course, because we don't have Jeffrey Jones, we get claymation Jeffrey Jones, which is not a short scene. I mean, it's a full story about how he was flying to go bird watching and his plane crashed into the ocean and a shark bit him in half. Then we see that Charles is in the afterlife quite a bit, but he doesn't have a head. So we
Half
only
of
see, yeah. Then his funeral, we see Jeffrey Jones' picture on the tombstone. So we see his likeness multiple times, and we're referencing Charles multiple times. Even in the end, now that Catherine O'Hara's dead and she's getting on the soul train, she meets him again and they, embrace and walk off. So I don't know. I feel kind of weird about that. Like if you have a problem with what this actor did and that's why you don't bring him back, then I feel like then you should leave his likeness and his character alone too. Like, or have had Catherine O'Hara marry a different man.
Well, yes, there's any number of ways I think they could have worked around that. And I mean, it just feels really like they're picking and choosing what scandals they'd want to court because, there's stuff and there have been accusations made against Danny Elfman as well. But I know that it's because they didn't want to deal with Jones as an actor because even a little over a decade ago, Philip Kaufman directed a film called Hemingway and Gellhorn, and Jeffrey Jones shows up in that as a minor supporting character, and they wouldn't even credit him. He's not even in the credits
Well,
of
I was trying to look because I feel like we can hear Jeffrey Jones' voice, but he's not credited, and no one's on IMDb, no one's credited as Charles. So I wonder if he did do the voice, but they're not going to put him as part of the cast list. Anyway, I just find it weird. Like either do or don't, but this like middle stuff, I don't know. Okay, Danny DeVito's in The Thing. He runs the Lost and Found in the Afterlife, and this is where we're introduced to Monica Bellucci because Danny DeVito. So Monica Bellucci was murdered by Beetlejuice in self-defense. So she's in pieces and she's in like 6 different boxes in the Lost and Found. And Danny DeVito gets electrocuted while he's like shining the floors because he's the janitor, I guess.
Mhm.
And that sort of reawakens Monica Bellucci's character. And then we get a pretty fun scene of her putting herself together. This is why I think this would be a perfect airplane movie because you don't really need to pay attention to the story because it's so chaotic. But I do think there are a lot of cute moments. But she puts herself together, and then for the entirety of the movie, we get like maybe 3 more scenes where she's just stomping around, sucking souls.
And repeating the same dialogue over and over. Where's Beetlejuice? Because I made a comment on someone else's podcast that she wouldn't pass the Bechdel test because
Oh,
she's concerned with that. But her reanimation is a fun scene. It's set to the Bee Gees' classic track "Tragedy," or as
oh,
Alexis might say, "Stragedy," and but it's also very derivative of Burton's own work, particularly how that in A Nightmare Before Christmas, how is that character named Sally? She sews herself back up together.
oh, I
Um,
didn't even think about that. Yeah.
but yeah, again, it's a promising start that just flounders.
Okay, I really didn't like the Jenna Ortega character, and I know people won't agree, but I just think it feels kind of obvious and tired to make Lydia Deetz's daughter as insufferable as she was, except Lydia Deetz wasn't insufferable. She was kind of like I
Kooky.
kooky, and then but then because her stepmom is kooky, and then her dad was like this sweet man, it made for like such a charming trio.
And especially we learn that while Lydia was pregnant with her, and I think she went into labor while they were at a Mario Bava retrospective
Right.
during Kill Baby Kill. And it's like, yeah, it just it's a detail that doesn't make sense. And I think, yeah, Jenna Ortega just seems really boring in it.
She does. Her phone, she has her mom's contact as alleged mom. I thought that felt tired. The only line that she says that connected with me is at one point when Jenna's character is in the afterlife, she goes, I swear the afterlife is so random. And I thought that's exactly how I feel about this movie. It feels so random.
Oh, I know you've seen the trailer for the film as well. And you know the scene where these girls try to spook her with a makeshift ghost on
Yes.
campus, and she turns and says some withering line to them. It's a different line in the film than what was featured in the trailer.
Yeah, it's truncated in the film because in the trailer she says something a little more the library was open, but in the movie she just says something like when you have 3 kids by 2 different husbands or something. I don't know. It didn't have any bite. I just didn't I thought her character was annoying. I'm sorry. And then the way she meets Jeremy is through this bike accident, and I thought that bike accident looked so it reminded me of what's the movie with Lindsay Lohan where she's in Ireland?
Oh, the recent Netflix movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's it called? We Irish Wish or
Yeah.
Luck of the Irish? I don't know. There's a scene in that movie where she is riding her bike and I think almost falls off, and it looks so cheap and stupid. I thought that's how this bike accident looked. And Jenna Ortega, like, because she almost hits like 2 different vehicles before running through a fence, and then she hits a tree and bumps her head, and looks like she should be pretty scratched up and injured, and then she just gets up and sees this boy. I thought that was lame.
Agreed.
Okay, what wasn't lame was Catherine O'Hara's wig. I thought she looked so good and was so fun in this movie.
Catherine O'Hara is pretty fly, and brings an extra zest to every scene that had she not been in this, I mean, I think we would have been in trouble.
So let's do a string of positives since I know people are going to complain about me not loving this movie. Okay, Catherine O'Hara, I think looks great. Like you said, she adds something to every scene she's in. I think her writing in particular is really funny. Of course, Michael Keaton is Beetlejuice. It's like seeing an old friend who's
Yeah.
demented as hell. And I thought he was really cute. Um, the little baby Beetlejuice. So we first see it when because stupid Justin Theroux, he goes to Lydia's old house and they're in the attic where the model is, and they see the flyer that says, say Beetlejuice 3 times, and she tells Justin Theroux, do not say his name. If you say it 3 times, he'll show up. And she's already explained to him that part of her trauma and why she's blocked from moving forward in their relationship is she's holding on to this demonic spirit that haunts her. And he's like, well, I guess we're going to do some exposure therapy. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. And then they go into the afterlife. And then we see that Winona's character becomes pregnant and then she delivers like a baby Beetlejuice. And I thought that was a lot of fun.
That's gnawing on her leg.
I want to stick with the positives, but I thought like this story could have been simplified with fewer characters. And then why couldn't they have made it? What if Winona got sucked into marrying Beetlejuice and have a baby with him? And the movie is about that or something. But anyway, what else did I like? Willem Dafoe is really cute. His character's catchphrase is "You got to keep it real," and he's
Look, because he died, because you do all his own stunts, and then a grenade went off and blew part of his head off.
so. But then the way his head looks is really cool because it's almost like it looks like he's missing part of his head, and you can see his skull, but it also looks like it's tattooed on.
Yeah, well, it's like a prop almost.
Yeah,
Well, and his character that he was famous for playing was named, I think, Frank Hardballer.
something like that. Yeah, he's really cute. Um, I think Monica Bellucci looks fabulous,
Mhm.
and I felt like her character belonged in like a Marvel movie, but I did enjoy her. I just wish that, I mean, the movie y'all could have just brought back Michael Keaton and then have an entirely different story where he meets this woman who's more demented and evil than he is, and then he becomes like the protagonist. That could have been interesting.
And then he gives us the backstory about the marriage, like as if he was in an old dubbed like Black Sunday Mario Bava movie.
Speaking in French.
Is it French or Italian?
Oh, you're probably right. Italian, sorry.
Um, but also that doesn't quite fit. I think there's a way that could have been modified better because I'm still very unclear about, okay, you got away with her, but you got away from her, but now you're dead, and I don't know.
So, yeah, I agree. But again, it just feels like a lot of random scenes put together because I thought that Beetlejuice telling his origin story in Italian was a cute scene, but then yeah, it just feels so like disconnected from what her
And
mission is. Like, so she just wants revenge.
right, and same with as much as I think Defoe is fun, he also seems really isolated from everything else until it's
Hmm.
convenient to
Like
where,
literally, yeah.
yeah. And then, oh, a side note about Catherine O'Hara, whose Delia is now like an artist who uses her body as a living mural that she does traveling art shows with. But did you notice some of the installations?
Well, I noticed there were a couple callbacks to the '88 film. Um,
And one of them, it must be a reference to The Crows Have Eyes from Schitt's Creek.
oh, I didn't notice that, but it's hard not to see Moira Rose in the fashions, not the
Right.
voice. Oh, no, I didn't notice that, but that's cool. So speaking of Catherine O'Hara, how does she die? She wants to perform because everything is a spectacle. So at Charles' funeral, she wants to perform a snake ritual. So she orders these exotic, live, venomous, poisonous snakes. But sh-
Asp.
but it's explained that their venom has been removed. But that's not true. So as she's doing the ritual, the 2 snakes bite her and kill her ass. And then she's in the waiting room, which we all know from the first film and the trailers, where the lady tells them take a number. And of course, she is not interested in waiting. And at one point she says, I have global entry. I thought that was funny.
I have done that. That's been me.
Yeah.
Why am I right here?
What did you think about the Soul Train?
I thought it was too obvious and kind of awkward. It's designed kind of like Michael Jackson's Thriller, but it seems to be where the only Black people in this universe are constantly performing on this platform, not getting on the train. And I thought if you're going to do that, give us a really good cameo like Rosie Perez.
Or
But
Don Cornelius? I know he's
yeah,
dead, but that would be even more like well, I don't know. I think I also felt like it seemed kind of odd that this is clearly like referencing Black culture with Soul Train, except it's not using the Soul Train music and
yeah.
it's not referencing the iconic television show. And then, yeah, the only Black people we see are dancing in front of the Soul Train. But
Yeah, that it just felt like there was a way that that could have worked better, maybe, and maybe only use it once.
yeah, yeah, because we see it in like in the middle and then at the end. But Um, so the film is, I didn't even look at the runtime, but I know based on when I got out of the theater, 100 minutes. It feels longer, and I think something that contributes to that is the wedding scene towards the end is quite long.
It is. I do enjoy their use of MacArthur Park, especially the Richard Harris version.
Same, yeah.
But again, it's just also ramshackle and inconvenient how the villains are dispatched and uh, I mean the really fun satirical moment is when the influencers get sucked into their phones.
Yes.
Um, but I don't know, like I don't understand why the rest of the film couldn't have had that kind of energy.
Well, actually, that speaking of that, I was thinking, wouldn't it have been fun to see Beetlejuice in like the modern world, like how he would handle, because he's so inappropriate. Because in this film, he seems pretty sedate. I remember watching it, as an adolescent and thinking like, oh, this feels very adult. And then the reason I've seen Beetlejuice, the 1988 film, so many times is I used to have a studio and I would play that movie on repeat while I was working. And even then, I remember thinking, oh, this movie feels kind of edgy and risque, but this one, it feels pretty tame. And I wonder, I mean, especially Jenna Ortega's character, who, while I hate this word, feels kind of woke in a way. But yeah, I wonder what if the film had more of that tone of like the influencers getting sucked into their phone.
Or him kind of Beetlejuice's ways clashing with a new generation's understanding of what the world should look like.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But like my pull quote says, it was a pleasant affair. It was nice revisiting, you know, Catherine O'Hara and Michael Keaton. And would I watch this movie again? I would put it on in the background.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It is. I feel like I haven't really liked a Tim Burton film in a long time, and it's nice. Speaking of the special effects in this, because he's a director who I think kind of ruined himself. In that, there's kind of a one little joke about Disney in there because with his Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo kind of besmirching his abilities and career. Because I think doesn't Lydia say that as a child, Astrid dressed up as something
Oh,
related to Disney
Snow
princess?
White's dead mother or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, it's just been a long time. And as a kid, like, Edward Scissorhands still kind of gets me. But going back in his filmography, I think maybe Sleepy Hollow was the last time I really had significant memories about liking his work. But so I don't know, just because I think for years he said he wouldn't do the sequel unless it was gonna be good, right? And uh,
Okay.
I guess it was fun for them to do. I don't know. It just doesn't. Because if you have to think, like something really is before Beetlejuice, he did Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and but Beetlejuice was the big hit. But oh, as a kid watching something like this seems almost revolutionary. Like it's so weird
Mhm.
and it's idiosyncratic. And if you this is your first time being introduced to this world, it just doesn't feel that way.
Oh, I did want to mention the sandworms, I believe were practical and they look cool. The magic, people always want to say the magic is not there as it was in the original. And I do feel that way about this one. I did want to say though, there's a realtor selling the homes or there's a realtor who is selling the Dietz's home and it's Halloween time. And I thought a funny moment is her Halloween costume is a reverse mortgage sweater.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah.
has mortgage on her sweater, but it's like mirrored. I kind of thought that I want to wear that for Halloween this year. But anyway, what would you give Beetlejuice?
2.5.
I think it's fine. I would give it 2.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.